Hello and welcome on this video about installation of SQL Server 2019 for HOPEX installation. Before you proceed, please make sure you have access to the documentation that explains the HOPEX technological stack as well as the installation process of HOPEX. You will find there information about SQL Server version supported as well as configuration options. During this video, we will see how to install SQL Server 2019 and how to make sure that we set up the proper collation to avoid any charset issue when you'll be inputting data in HOPEX. How to install SQL Management Studio, which is an optional component to manage import-export of backups or to manage user in SQL Server. We will see in this video as well how to create a user with the access right. Let's now go to the server. SQL Express 2019 can be used for database where it's a size not bigger than 10 gigabyte. Otherwise, you will need to have other edition of SQL. I'm doing this installation on a Windows Server 2016 on the latest version of HOPEX with enough memory and CPU to be able to run the database. This server will be used in some of the demos that you may see about the installation of HOPEX. So first, go on the Microsoft website and download SQL Express. Once you have downloaded the setup, you will be able to run it and choose the options. You can go to basic or custom options. I recommend you choose custom to be able to change the options and install the minimum required features. Just press install to proceed. At that stage, the tool will download the required elements for SQL Express. Remember, this video does not intend to be an expert deployment of SQL Server, but more the minimum basic option that you should put to run with HOPEX. Make sure you have enough space to unzip the package that has been downloaded. You are now under the options of SQL Express, and you can create your new server. We are here in the situation where we install a standalone installation on this server. We're going to accept the license. We may want to check use Microsoft updates so that you get notified. Depending on the server sizing and especially hard drive speed, the setup might take more or less time. Ensure that all the options have been passed. You might get a warning for the firewall and you can have a look to see what's inside, but most of the time it is fine. We're going to proceed to the next step and select the feature we want to enable for SQL. Unselect all and select the database engine. We may also want to choose client tool connectivity. This is the two minimum required features for HOPEX to run. All the other features are not necessary for HOPEX. In that video, we're going to leave the default installation folder. You can give a name to your instance, so you can give it a default name, or you can even change it. In that video, I'm going to name the instance SQL Express 2019. I'm going to proceed to the next step. At that stage, I will choose to enable SQL Server Browser because I will need it for other videos. In standalone deployment, you may not need to enable it by default. Don't forget to go in the tab Collation and choose the appropriate collation option. Make sure you choose SQL Latin 1 General CP1 CIAS. If this is not what you see here, just click Customize SQL Collection. and browse in the list and select the appropriate value. It is important that your database is created with this option so that when you will create HOPEX repository, the content inside will be properly stored to avoid any chart set issues. You can now proceed to the next step. I recommend you to select the mixed mode in terms of authentication to ensure that you will be able to connect to the database with the user you're using right now to do the installation, but also to use the native SA account that exists in the database. Put a password complex enough to fit your password policy and proceed to the next step. The setup now is in progress. It may take a while depending on your server. The installation is now completed. Ensure that each component has succeeded to install. You can now close the setup. All you need for HOPEX is now ready. You will be able to connect to HOPEX using the SA user. Should you want to create another user, you need to launch your database. For that, you have several tools that you can use. You can use SQL Management Studio that you can download as well from the Microsoft website. So go on the official website of Microsoft and download the latest version of the Management Studio. Once the download is finished, you can launch the SQL Management Studio. This part is totally optional. It depends on how you want to use it. You may install this component on another server to access remotely this current server. We will use the SQL Server Management Studio in other videos to import backups to restore the environment of HOPEX. Once the install is finished, you may need to restart your server to complete the installation. I'm going to proceed with the restart. The server is now restarted. I am able to launch the newly installed component. So I see my SQL Server 2019, and I see the component I just installed, in particular the Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. This is one way to adjust your database, as I mentioned, to import, delete, or create backups of your database, but also to manage the users that will connect to the database. Remember, at installation, we have set password for the default account SA, but you may want to create a custom users to limit the right of this user for HOPEX. This is what we are going to see now. We are going here to connect with the user SA with the password that we have defined at installation. At that stage of this video, we are just installing SQL Server. We don't have any HOPEX database. We will see how to put a database of HOPEX in other videos. If we want to add additional users on top of the SA user, we can go here in Login and create a new login. HOPEX SA user. We're going to say it's an SQL Server authentication. We're going to give a password that is complex enough to fit the password policy. We're going to go into the server role, and we need to add additional role for HOPEX to run. So we need to have the DB creator role to work properly. In some situation, after installation, you may want to remove the DB creator role if this is not a secure aspect of your security policy. You can press OK and create the user. The user is now created. We may need to come back at a later stage to grant database role for this particular user, in particular to be the DB owner of the database of HOPEX. At that stage of this video, we are good to proceed for a next step of installation. Thank you for watching this installation prerequisite for SQL Server.